Mike Sullivan was a decent man. He was a very committed man, and I knew Mike both professionally and also personally. He and Jamie were friends with Maria and I early on in my campaign when I first got started into politics here in Talbot County. I've known Mike and Jamie for quite a while. We knew that he was struggling with cancer, and that he had taken some time away from his work with the Planning Commission. And he came back, and we were all very encouraged to see him come back last year. And of course, you always want to think the positive, that hey, they kicked it, they beat it, and they're going to go on and live a successful life. But in this case, it just didn't work that way with Mike. Not to say we always agreed on everything, but even in our disagreement on issues was always done in a very civil manner, a very respectable manner. You never had to worry about Mike going out and spreading rumor about you in the community and things of that nature. He would just tell you, hey, I don't really agree with that point, Corey, and we would move on. With him, I guess his level of commitment, Mike came here after a very successful career in the mortgage industry and came here to Talbot County, and he jumped right in and became embedded in the community. He did a lot of work next door with the Avalon Foundation. He came to council when they were doing their capital campaign to redo the Avalon, the theater. So he was not born here, raised here, but surely was a part of the fabric of what makes Talbot County a great place to live and work and rest. Yeah, Doug and I go back quite a ways. When I first came with the council back in '07, my background is in public safety, so I was somewhat given the task to go out and do some of the background investigations, if you would, about Doug and report my findings back to the council. I was the new person on the council. I was a freshman councilman back then with Duncan and Foster and Harrison. So, they sent a young guy out to do a lot of the background work. So I always looked at Doug as being my first hire, if you would, as a council member. And we knew that we wanted to take the Department of Corrections into a different direction. The old concept of just jail them and leave them sit there for 18 months and then release them again, it just wasn't working. That old philosophy was just not working. So we wanted to find somebody that would take the department into a new direction, that had new thoughts, new ideas, innovative approach to corrections. And Doug went down to Wacomico. They did a program called RSAT, it's a Residential Substance Abuse Treatment. And RSAT was very successful in Wacomico County. I'd heard about it, read about it, went down and did a tour. And all the other wardens and directors I talked with about him and about RSAT, they gave very glowing recommendations. So we felt that we had the right guy, bringing him on board to take over for Denisio, who was retiring at the time. And 10 years later, I think that we run probably one of the best detention facilities in the state for our size. I think we address the cognitive behavioral aspect of corrections nowadays, which is a big piece of trying to get these men and women to think differently, make better decisions, and not come back with the same problems than they left. So that concept was something that Doug was very familiar with. We started a lot of programs underneath his direction. Of course, we opened up the first central booking facility here in Talbot County, and I think probably the first one on the shore, if I'm not mistaken. So, which alleviated a lot of downtime for the law enforcement officers. We did a classification officer. We're testing every person that come in the front door. They're getting a urinalysis test. We are now have what's called MAT, which is medical assistant treatment. We're also doing that inside the institution, which wasn't done before. We have a transition coordinator that helps inmates that are about to be released transition back into the community. So all of these initiatives, all of these different individuals came about underneath Doug's watch. So it's been great to work with. I think the first you got to look at is Dr. Frida Watley, and under her direction, when you talk about children's health care and the initiative to bring together the health department with the Department of Social Services with Linda Webb, and also bring in the Talbot County school system. Trauma is a part of life, unfortunately, and when you're talking about childhood trauma and how that carries over into adolescence and carry over into young adulthood and carry over into full adulthood, that unresolved trauma we're seeing is a major factor in a lot of the behavioral issues we're seeing in adults. You may have heard the term ACE, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. ACE is not a new phenomenon. It started out on the West Coast. It's making its way across the country. And what ACE does is it looks at 8 trauma factors and how these events on that young brain, on that developing brain, can lead to issues down the road, behavioral issues down the road, health issues down the road. And although you may not think that the event was traumatic to you, your body knows, and your body keeps record of that. So what physicians have seen is that oftentimes these unresolved trauma manifest themselves into other health issues in the individual. So what this consortium, if you would, of community leaders is trying to do is identify these young people in the community at an early age, share what information they can about the individual, and then try as best we can to develop a plan of action, a wraparound plan of action that will address the trauma and hopefully allow them to lead very healthy and productive lives going forward. Did a tour of the school system. Superintendent Griffiths is always very kind to invite us, the council, to come and do a tour of the schools. And one of the things that I saw during my tour of Eastern High School was this iPad on a tripod, if you would, on wheels. And I asked about it and was told that this is a bot for students who are unable to attend class due to illness or sickness or injury. And the student can log in, and this bot goes around from classroom, and they can it has a camera on it, so of course they can see what's going on in the class, and the class can see them and respond back to them, and so can the teacher. So you're talking about 21st century stuff here, and I think what the school system is trying to do is to have the state recognize this technology as the student actually being in class, so they'll get credit for being in class that day and not count towards a missed time in class. So if you have a student who has a communicable disease, but they can still sit up at a table and log on and be a part of the discussion in the classroom, then why not give them credit for being a part of the class for that day? I think that right now it's being used for those students who are out on prolonged illness or recovering from some surgery that doesn't allow them to physically be in the classroom. So I don't think right now the school board is using it for someone who's been removed from the classroom because of a disciplinary reason. You know, we worked through those deliberation time periods. I think we gave most of the departments what they asked for. We couldn't, of course, fill every bucket to the top, but I think we did a very good job of going through the budgets and addressing those those areas that they really needed the most going forward into 19 and 20. No, I wasn't sad or disappointed at all. Again, I think that you know, Angela Lane, our financial officer, and Andy Hollis, our county manager, you know, they do a lot of the upfront work with the department heads. So by the time the county gets the first draft, they've done a lot of the weeding and cutting and all of that. So when we see it, we're seeing a cut down version, if you would, of those departmental requests. Yeah, we try to hit the department needs where best we could. Of course, you know, the school system budget is always going to be the big chunk of your revenue, your expenditures. So that was 50% of the budget. But then you try to come back and say, okay, where can we fill the rest of the budget in? And public safety is always going to be a big one. I think that's somewhere around 21% of the budget currently. So, and it's just the cost of just doing business, the equipment costs are just increasing. You know, the cost of an ambulance, the cost of a stretcher, the cost of turnout gear for your volunteer fire departments. Although their volunteers are not being paid, but we still have to pay for the equipment that they use. So, you know, those costs, they don't go down. The cost. I would still give us a high marks when it comes to looking at what you have to spend and looking at the requests made from the school board. We did not hit every position that they asked for. I think they asked for 2 math teachers. We were able to give them 1. They asked for I think 3 gifted and talented. We were able to give them 1. So and then we also gave additional positions for English second language, and also for assistants for those classroom assistants to come work alongside the teachers in the classroom, because we realize that's important as well, that the teacher can have somebody in the classroom working alongside them. So we a $58 million request from the school board. We came in around 57 million of that request. So I don't think that we have anything to hang our head about and be ashamed of. We looked at what the requests were, and we said we can't fill every single position on here, but let's see how close we can get. I got emails back from, you know, members of the school board thanking me. Got emails back from the president of the Talbot County Teachers Association thanking me. So I think that, you know, they understood what we were up against, and I think they showed that they appreciated the effort that we put forward. We haven't started. You know, we haven't started putting that question out there and organizing a team that would go out and mobilize the community, educate the community. I don't feel we did as good a job the last time in making sure people understood what it was we were asking. And of course, the last election, you know, we understand all that was good and bad about that. But the question still remains, how do we continue paying for the individuals, first of all, quality deputies, quality correctional officers, quality EMTs? How do we continue paying for them, staying in competition with our surrounding counties without the revenues to do that? How do we continue giving you quality roadways? How do we continue running sewer lines to remote areas of the county? How can we partner with Eastern Utility? I hope we're going to talk about that too with broadband, if we don't have the revenues to do it. And so these are the questions that we need to be posing to individuals and to the community. And under the current revenue cap that we have in place, we're just not able to recoup the revenue off a property tax that we need to put forward to these types of initiatives. You know, not to spend wildly and crazy, But I mean, these are real initiatives, and when you sit down and talk with your sheriff and you talk with the correctional director, and they're saying, "Hey, I'm losing quality men and women because they're going elsewhere to work," that's a problem, And also, again, on the capital side, we're going to have to, and we talked about this before as well, we're going to have to build a new sheriff's department. Right now, they're located over at the Talbot County Business Center on Glebe Road. That building will come down. It might come down. It will come down. But you have to start working now, either securing land or securing space to move your sheriff's office into. We know with Dr. Wiley, we're going to have to build a new health department. They're in a very aged building over on Hanson Street. We've talked about this before as well. We've sent Brian Moore from our Buildings and Grounds Department over. He's done some mitigation where he could with that building. But still, you only can do so much to a building of that age and with the structural concerns that they have there. So we know we're going to have to have a new place for them. These things cost money. Yes, you're going to do these types of big projects by borrowing the funds, but you still got to pay the debt. Right. You still got to pay it. So we're going to put a team together. I guess long story short, we're going to put a team together. We're going to go out. We're going to be talking with community groups, making sure that we answer questions and pose the right questions back to them, and speak to them as openly and as honestly as we possibly can about the importance of their future in here in Talbot County.
Are you allowed?
We're partnering with Eastern Utility to put in for a grant, a USDA grant, and I think the total amount of the grant is around $25 million. And what it would allow Eastern Utility to do is to basically go to every part of the county that's unserved or underserved and run broadband. So there was an application fee. Of course, anytime you're doing these kind of big grants with the government, there's an application process you have to go through. Part of that requires you to put some upfront money into the game. So we were more than happy to do that, and so the county will be contributing towards that application fee, and we feel we have a very good application, and we're hoping and praying that we are awarded the grant, and then Eastern Utility will go off and start doing the work. We do have precedent in that we worked with Eastern Utility recently over at Lewis Crest. There were about 45 or 50 homes in that development that we were able to partner with them to, again, go in and do the last mile and connect on the broadband. So I'm excited about this initiative with them, this partnership. I think that it will get us to where we always wanted to be, which is to have a county that is fully served from border to border with broadband capability. And I know the homeowners who are buying, nice sized homes on waterways and long driveways, they're gonna appreciate it, as well as those who are nestled in these small subdivisions. Yeah, it's to make sure that they can put the line in the ground, and then on the consumer side of it, offer you the service, whatever tier of you want to purchase, at a reasonable price, so that your capital charges won't be so onerous that you're like, I don't even want to bother with this. And so yeah, that's it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
American Salmon is an outfit that approached Cassandra Van Hooser and Sam Shogay from Economic Development and Tourism about a year ago, about coming in and doing a in-house salmon grow operation. And they would take the salmon from egg and straight through its reproduction process and into a full harvesting age, and then harvest the salmon, package it right there on site, and then ship it to groceries and stores across the country. So everything will be done right there. There are going to be these large tanks in which the I guess the embryos, whatever, would be placed into, and then once they grow to a larger size, placed into another tank, and so forth. And then once they reach an age of maturity, they would be harvested and go into a production right there. First heard about the idea, we said, well, this is exactly what we needed. We had when Alan Harim left that plant, the last thing you want to see is a lot of vacant buildings and storefront. And so who could come in here and take over this plant? This is a large facility. It has its own wastewater treatment capabilities on site. And so we had some ideas one time about converting it into a wastewater treatment facility for the Cordova residential homes at one time. So when American Salmon came in and said, hey, we want to purchase it, here's our plan, we said, great, let's see how we can do it. So when that operation gets up and running, now we're going to have to do some slight rezoning for them to be able to operate. I talked with Mary Kay Verdery recently about this. We don't think it's a heavy lift for the council to make this zoning change. Going to require a text amendment. There will be a public hearing, of course, for the public to have some input on it. But we see this as a win-win, and I'm excited about it for the Cordova area, really. I think what people have to realize is that the Talbot County Council works with two distinctions. It works as a legislative body, but it also works as an executive body. And it has those separate powers. And so there are certain things that we can do, certain decisions that we can make underneath the executive function. And as long as we do them in accordance with the Sunshine Law, as long as we do them in accordance with the Open Meetings Law, they can be done. Whether or not it makes individuals happy or not that it wasn't done out in open session doesn't make what was decided wrong or done improperly. So there are times where we may meet on two at a time to discuss various things, whether it be a particular bill or whether it be a request that's being made by a civic group. And you just want to bounce ideas off of one another and kind of get a sense of what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And we do that quite often. I wouldn't say a lot, but quite often. Council members will bounce ideas off of one another. Sometimes they're done by email, sometimes they're done over the phone, sometimes they're done, over a cup of coffee. But you just want to get a sense what the other guy in the other chair is thinking. And sometimes saying it out loud gives you a chance to also hear it, and make sure that you're not off base. But yeah, we do have an executive function that we have to be able to bounce things off of each other, and we do have the right to do some of this in a privacy or closed setting type of a format. And we do, and again, it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen, and it needs to happen because, you have to be able to sort things out in quite frank, sometimes discussions, and it may not be appropriate to have those discussions out in the open. So. Well, we got one more thing. We just got approval for the grant from the state to connect the sewer lines down to Bosman-Nevitt. So Ray Clark just announced that if you remember, we postponed moving on the connecting of sewer into the Bosman-Nevitt corridor. The council passed a bill last year that would allow sewer to go into the Broadband corridor. But we held off moving on it because, again, just like with broadband, there are capital charges that will be passed down to the user. And without grant funding to bring down the cost of installing the line, we felt that it wasn't fair. And there's going to be a phase-in approach. There's going to be phase 1, phase 2, and I think phase 3. And we wanted to make sure there was enough grant money in hand to cover all 3 phases, so that from the time we hit the top of the roadway going down, all the homeowners will be paying a fair share, an equal share when it comes to capital charges. So we were successful in getting that money, and so we're going to be looking to go ahead and start the engineering for that sewer line to go down to Bosman and Everett. And once in place, I think the citizens there, when it comes to their capital charges on that line, will be far significantly less than if we had gone forward with it last year. So I'm really glad we waited. They've been up and running since the beginning of the year. I don't know how many meetings they've had to date, but we recently passed their rules and procedure for the short-term rental compliance board. There were 1 or 2 amendments that we put in place for that, but we did pass that on last Tuesday, so that now they have a set of rules and procedures to carry them through the rest of the year. There's always going to be hiccups. There's always going to be individuals who don't like this part of the process, who don't like that part of the process, but all in all, I think that the compliance board is doing exactly what they were tasked to do. They're looking at the applicant. They're listening to those neighbors within that proximity of the rental unit, and they're weighing the pros and cons, and they're coming up with I think good decisions on whether or not to award the license or not. Our co-compliance officer is out there. He's making sure that things inside the home are done correctly. Remember that the rules must be posted of who is on the license and who is entitled to be in the house. Mm-hmm. That has to be posted on the wall. The one thing that I'm hearing more about is the entryway doors and windows that some homeowners had to widen. There's an international building code that the short-term rental policy or bill implements, that the home has to meet these international building standards. So some of the older homes that were being used as short-term rentals may have had more narrow windows or more narrow doorways. So you now have to come in underneath the new standard. Well, it's not a new standard, but underneath the standard of the International Building Code. So I think that has been probably the more complaint that we've been getting, or concern we've been getting. Hey, I got a license. I've had a license for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and now you're telling me my windows aren't wide enough.